Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to share with you the tips that I have for your law enforcement interview process. If you're new to my channel, my name is Melissa. I've been a police officer for 15.5 years now, and I am currently a lieutenant in a large metropolitan police department. In this video, we're going to go over different things you can do to help prepare you for your oral interview for being hired as a police officer. I participated in several police processes when I was interested in becoming a police officer, many of which I did because I wanted more experience with the interview process. Since being a police officer, I have been lucky enough to participate in different promotional exam processes in which an oral interview was part of that process. I've also been lucky enough to be an assessor for interviews in promotional processes as well. And after participating in these processes myself, as well as evaluating people in these different processes, I have found that there are several things that could probably be helpful to a young candidate who is about to be finding themselves in an oral interview board. So in this video, we're going to go over some of the basics of what you can do to be more effective in your oral interview. And we're also going to be going over some different questions that you may have when being hired as a police officer in your oral interview board. So if that is what you are looking for, keep watching. The first thing I will say is that you most likely are going to be very nervous. Everybody is nervous when they go to these oral interview boards. You wouldn't be human if you weren't nervous in this situation. The other thing I'll say is that everyone sitting on the other side of that table is breathing much easier than you because they're not the one who's currently being interviewed. But believe me, they know what it feels like, and they have also been in that process and done the same thing. So don't be intimidated by anybody that is interviewing you. Just do everything you can to try to relax in that situation. Again, I know it's really difficult, but just remember that everyone is nervous in these kinds of situations and you will be fine. The next thing I would suggest is that you look professional and well groomed. For men, I would definitely suggest some kind of a suit with a tie or some kind of dress pant with a blazer. Definitely the same for a woman. A dress pant with a blazer is what I would suggest. Specifically for women, I would have your hair up out of your face. You don't have to wear it in a bun. It doesn't have to be or feel unnatural, but don't play with your hair. If you find yourself reaching for your hair just in your everyday life, I wouldn't have it anywhere where it's accessible to you, basically, if that makes sense. Another thing I would 100% not suggest for a woman is to wear any kind of clothing that is too tight or too revealing. It looks bad. It makes women look bad. It makes us all look bad. Please don't do that. So nothing revealing and nothing too tight. Have a well-fitted blazer, suit combination, something like that, and you will be good to go. I tend to think that darker colors look good on most everybody. Most people can pull off grays or blacks or blues, something like that. Keep it simple. Your panel is probably just looking for you to be professional looking and groomed. They're not looking to be impressed by anything that you're wearing. So keep it simple, keep it clean, look nice. The next thing that I would suggest for you is to perform a mock interview with yourself. So go online, look for as many possible job interview questions as you can, and do a mock interview with yourself. I would suggest that you record this on your phone because you want to go back and see exactly how you were answering these questions, what you looked like when you were answering these questions, and anything that you may be doing that is distracting when you're answering these questions. I know you guys can't see it right now, but I'll show you. When I'm talking, when I'm doing these videos, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this constantly. So I can tell you that when I actually do have an interview or I speak in public, one of the things that I like to do is hold a pen in my hands, and I have to actually think about and focus on holding that pen and not moving my hands around, because I tend to do that when I talk. But I figured out that I was doing this because I recorded myself while I was responding in a mock interview situation, and I saw, wow, that's so distracting. I didn't even realize I was doing that. So I highly encourage you to do that. And also, while you're doing this, look again for things that you're doing that are distracting, but also, how are you speaking? You want to pay attention to different periods of dead silence that you may have. Are you saying a lot? A lot of people people use filler words, but is one of them for you? And how often are you saying that in your responses? You also want to pay attention and see what kind of eye contact you're making. And I know it's weird and unnatural to be looking up at a phone while you're talking, but even in that situation, are you able to pay attention to your phone? Does it look like you're making eye contact with it when you watch that video back? This is a great way to figure out anything that you may be doing that could be distracting or could distract from what you need to do in that interview. When you're speaking to a panel and they've asked you a question, I found that it's very effective when you're able to look at every member of that panel and make eye contact with everybody who is sitting there. I also think people don't always do this, so it's something that your panel could really notice about you and that stands out about you, that you pay attention to people while you're talking to them and you're paying attention to their behavior as well back to you. You'll most likely also be presented with one or more scenario questions. And in these actual questions, your panel is usually not looking for you to know the correct answer according to policy and procedure of their department. They're usually going to be looking to see that you can make a decision and that you can stick with it, or that you can use your critical thinking and explain the decision and why you made it. And again, sticking with your decision, especially if you believe it was the right decision and you can explain it to them and why you did it. I would suggest that you do some research on that area, look at some of the different types of people and cultures that you'll encounter in that area, and be able to discuss things about you that would make you a great fit for that specific department and that specific area. They may ask you why you want to be a police officer. I think this question is kind of getting old because everyone says, oh, I want to help people. That's great. If you have a specific reason that motivated you to be interested in law enforcement, go ahead and share that. And hopefully it's something interesting, because that could really help you stand out, but make sure that it's something that you can expand on. It's not just about helping people. It's not just about serving your community. There's a lot more that goes into law enforcement, and especially if you have something personal that you can share, I think that's always a plus. One thing I know doesn't impress me at all, but I guess some agencies are really into it, is having friends or family members in law enforcement, or saying like, oh, I think law enforcement is just part of my bloodline or whatever. I don't find that impressive at all. Just because somebody in your family has done a job doesn't mean that you're going to be good at that job. You could also spin that in a way to make it sound a little bit better. Maybe you heard all these exciting stories from a family member who was a police officer, and you always thought it would be so cool to do the same thing, you know, not just, oh, well, my dad's a police officer or so-and-so is a police officer, but be able to expand on it and explain more about it, and something a little bit more specific, and something that would help explain a little bit more than just you have family who are police. Another thing you can do is try to highlight any skills or your specific attitude that you think would be really good for law enforcement. You know, maybe you really love talking to people, maybe you're really outgoing. These are great qualities to have as a police officer, because you can really go out into the community, talk to people, get to know people, form those meaningful relationships with your community, and just be somebody that people like and they like seeing and talking to. That would be really impressive. Is that who you are? I don't know. That's just an example. But whatever it is about you that you could highlight in a way to explain why it would make you a great police officer and a great police officer for that department, make sure that you do that. They may also ask why you want to work for their specific agency, and that would be where researching that agency would help you provide a response to that. So it could be a variety of things. You know, maybe you like the area, maybe you're very interested in the culture, maybe that agency has a really great reputation and you want to go there to learn all about that and why that is. It could be a variety of things, but make sure you can explain reasoning about why you want to work for that specific agency. You most surely will be asked ethical questions. I brought that up a little bit earlier, and especially now in law enforcement, they want officers who are willing to hold other officers accountable. So if you saw an officer that was doing something that was morally or ethically wrong, would you be willing willing to step in and stop that officer from continuing in that behavior? And then also, would you ensure that you would notify a supervisor of this so that proper follow-up could be made with that officer? Maybe they need additional training, or maybe they were confused on some kind of policy. And knowing that you would take that step is also very important, because they're trying to determine if you would do the right thing. One thing you would also want to be sure that you do with your panel is thank them for their time, and thank them for taking the time out of their schedules to interview you. Not only that, but before you leave that room, you want to make sure that you have a very firm handshake, especially women. I don't know why some women think, you know, I'll daintily put my hand out. And no, we're gonna shake their hand very firmly. We're gonna let them know that we mean business in that interview. You also want to make sure that you have questions for your panel. So whenever they open that up to you, or if they don't, say, hey panel, I have questions. I had some things I wanted to ask you. One thing that you want to be asking about is what training or resources are available to you after you get hired. What does the department offer? Do they have annual required training? Are you able to put in for different training and go to different places and do different exciting kinds of training? Or is it limited? Are you limited with it? Do they encourage people to train? Do they encourage people to get to the next level? How does it work with their department? Another way that you can evaluate your oral board panel is to see what is their response to this. Do they give you a generic response, oh yeah, we have training, yada yada, or can they actually explain to you what their department has to offer to you? This is a great question to ask, because again, you can test your own panel, and you can also see what is available in this department. Is this really somewhere where I can continue to grow and progress, or is there not going to be very much available to me in the future? If it's applicable in your situation, you could also ask what led to the vacancy that they are currently filling. So what you probably want to hear from that is that somebody retired, or they had an open process because they knew that they would have retirements coming up, or people made a career change decision, something like that, where they can professionally explain to you why that person is no longer in that position. I think that's a great question to ask. And again, now you're testing your panel. If you were interested in a certain position or a specific assignment, so for example, if you want to be a detective, you can ask them, what is the process to become a detective? How many detectives do you have working in whatever unit that you're interested in? And about how long does it take to become a detective or to reach that position? Again, in an agency that is squared away, they're going to be able to give you a good response to that. Another thing you could ask your panel is what they like most and what they like least about their positions and this agency. I think this is a great question, because you really want to know the ins and outs of this agency and what you can expect when you come to this agency. I think a panel would be impressed hearing that question from a young candidate. So these were just a couple of my own personal ideas and opinions about that interviewing process for your police officer positions. If you think of any other questions or you have any comments on any of this, please leave that down below so we can all read and review and learn from this. There's a lot more when it comes to interviews. These are just a couple things that I thought of and I thought might be helpful for a candidate going into a panel interview for a law enforcement position. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, y'all stay safe out there, and I will see you in my next video. Maybe because I was talking about having a firm handshake, we need to have a firm wave. Bye. Firm wave. Firm wave. Firm wave. A large metro. Why can't I say metro? It's not just helping about people, helping about people. These are just my thoughts and